The following is a short video on purchasing and receiving in Counterpoint. The starting point for understanding purchasing in Counterpoint is understanding the overall flow. To show this, I am going to go to Purchasing and point out that the flow is to begin with a purchase request, which once posted becomes a purchase order, and once that is received, is the receivings. For this demonstration today, we will begin by going to Purchasing, Purchase Request, and we will start with a purchase request by going to Purchase Request, Enter. To begin this document, I will click Auto Sign, and I will select my vendor. In this case, it will be Pinnacle. I can go on the Ship To and fill in the vendor information or where this will be shipped to for the store. On the Order tab, I can select things like the order date, other information, and comments if I choose to. But most importantly, I am probably heading to the Lines tab where I can choose and select my items. There's a magnifying glass here next to item number, which allows me to do a keyword lookup. Or, this is one way that I could pull up an item. Another option is to simply click on Add Items. And when I go to the second tab that says Select Items, I will see a list of items that are filtered for this vendor. This can be very helpful and save you some key clicks. In this case, I'm going to pick on just a few of these first items and select them here. I can choose Add Lines and Close, and these are now brought onto my purchase request. I will highlight the first line, and here's where I can make decisions about quantity. If I need to update my cost, I can do that here. I'll go ahead and fill in some quantities for this example. In this case, we'll order 12 of each of the first two items and 24 for the last. And in this case, I will assume that my costs that I currently had in Counterpoint were correct. If they were not, I could simply enter the correct cost. In this case, if I wanted to go up to $15.50, I can enter that cost at the time of creating this. The great thing about purchase requests is that you can save them at any time, and you could come back and look at this later. You could print out a form. Very malleable in terms of I can change at any time the item, the quantity, the cost, whatever I want to do with this. So this is very much a working document. Once I am happy with all of my changes, I can do a step called Post, and then this document becomes a purchase order, and I will preview this form so you can see that what started out life as a purchase request is now a PO. This is complete with the date that I ordered it, the vendor, where it will be shipped to, the items, quantities, and costs. Once I have a purchase order, there's not a lot of things that I might do with a purchase order. Usually, if you've gotten to this point, it's because you've provided this information to a vendor and they are filling this order. So typically not a lot of changes would happen at this point. But some things that you might do with a purchase order, you might choose to go print the form, which you could do from purchase order forms. If you needed to cancel a PO, you could do that from here. There is a step called reissue, which I will show in a separate video. And lastly, there is change purchase order. And although this seems like it might be helpful, this is somewhat locked down in terms of what you can order or edit. You'll notice when I come into this, Counterpoint allows me to edit costs. That's the one thing that I'd be allowed to edit through the change purchase. Again, if you had to make more significant changes, you would use reissue purchase order, which would push this back in the process to a purchase request, which you can make all the changes that you choose to. Typically in a standard flow, when we've gone to purchase request to PO, the next reasonable step that typically would happen is you would be receiving this PO. To do this, I'm going to Purchasing, Receivings. I will click on Receivings, Enter. And the starting point will be to click on Auto Assign. This is essentially the PO lookup. When I click Auto Assign, I will see a list of my open POs, and I will choose the one that I wish to receive. And then Counterpoint is going to offer me a few choices when I come into this form. And for our first pass, I will go with the first choice in each of these boxes and explain a little bit more later what these choices affect. But in this case, my lines will be selected, my quantity received will default to the expected, and for the time being, if I did not order it, I will leave that item on the PO. So here goes. We'll say OK to this. I'll go over to my Lines tab, and here are the lines that I'm receiving. I have the opportunity at the time of receiving to change the quantity that I might have received. I have the opportunity, if the vendor changed the cost, I can change the cost. And this is my chance to get this to line up with the invoice that was provided by the vendor. Now in this example, I defaulted all of my quantities to the received, and my lines were selected, meaning they were green lines. Any lines that are unselected, meaning this pink color, when I go to post, those will be ignored. Only lines that are green will be included when I post. This, if I was to continue, I would hit post, and these would now, those quantity on hands would go into Counterpoint. I'm going to back out of this for a moment just to show you the example of if I came in and some other choices I could have made when I was receiving. One choice I could make is my quantity received, I could default to 0. If I make that choice, then when I come in, all of my lines, the quantity is 0, and now I get to pick and choose what actually happened. Some folks like this method because then if at any point I post by accident or intentionally, I will have very intentionally entered the quantity. So in this case, we'll say I received the first two. Maybe I've not received this last one yet. If I have not received this, that quantity, they use the phrase quantity to backorder. That simply means it will stay on the PO. So in this case, I'll go ahead, receive what we've got so far, and I will post that. And here's the receiving form if you're curious what that looks like. And we have our quantities and our costs, and this last item has not yet been received. Because that is still open, if I go back to receiving on a different day, you'll see that my PO is still open. There's just one line that's still open, and I can come in. In this case, I'm going to default to my expecteds, and you'll notice that I still have this one line left. Now maybe I only received 12 of these, and I could choose not to wait any longer. If that's the case, my quantity to backorder, or again leave on PO, I could set that to 0. And by doing so, when I post this, we will be done with this PO. So I'll go ahead and post this and show that that is a true statement. When I go to my lookup again, there will be no current POs. So that is a just brief overview of the basics of purchasing in Counterpoint, going from beginning with the purchase request, which is a working document, to posting that, which becomes a PO. And eventually, when we choose to, we can receive that PO, and those quantities and those costs are now in Counterpoint. Thank you very much for checking in on our video. And any questions, as always, please reach out to us at lparetail.com.